Okay, 3 p.m. Okay, okay, ready? ค่ะ Good afternoon อาจารย์ Riemer สวัสดีค่ะ ขอต้อนรับทุกท่านเข้าสู่กิจกรรมสารัฐสนทนาพิพิธภัณฑ์ศึกษามหิดล ดิฉันผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.พทูคูศรีพิทักษ์อาจารย์ประจำสถาบันวิจัยภาษาและวัฒนธรรมเอเชีย มหาวิทยาลัยมหิดล รับหน้าที่เป็นพิธีกรค่ะ กิจกรรมนี้เป็นส่วนหนึ่งของโครงการจัดตั้งหลักสูตรศิลปศาสตร์มหาบัณฑิต สาขาพิพิธภัณฑ์ศึกษา อนุกรมที่ 1 วิวิธล่องใต้ จะจัดไปพร้อมกับการเดินทางของวิวิธชาติพันธุ์ล่องใต้นะคะระหว่างวันที่ 17 ถึง 27 มีนาคม 2565 วันนี้จัดเป็นครั้งที่ 1 นะคะหัวข้อการสนทนา Gender Inclusivity and Heritage ในครั้งแรกนี้เราได้รับเกียรติจากผู้เชี่ยวชาญด้านโบราณคดีและมรดกวัฒนธรรม Dr. Riemer Knoop ผู้ก่อตั้ง Gordon Cultural Advice ที่กรุงอัมสเตอร์ดัมประเทศเนเธอร์แลนด์นะคะอาจารย์ Riemer เป็นอดีตอาจารย์พิเศษที่สอนทางด้านมรดกวัฒนธรรมณ Rainbow Academy และมีผลงานวิจัยเกี่ยวกับความยั่งยืนทางสังคมด้วยนะคะผลงานสำคัญของอาจารย์คือเป็นผู้เขียนร่วมในหนังสือที่ชื่อว่า Sustainability นะคะคือการนิยมความยั่งยืนนะคะอาจารย์เป็นที่ปรึกษาให้แก่องค์กรทางด้านวัฒนธรรมทั้งในยุโรปและในเอเชียแล้วก็เป็นอาจารย์อาคันตุกะนะคะของที่สถาบันด้วยและปัจจุบันก็เป็นที่ปรึกษาของโครงการจัดตั้งหลักสูตรศิลปศาสตร์มหาบัณฑิตพิพิธภัณฑ์ศึกษาของสถาบันค่ะ Good afternoon, Ajahn Dr. Riemer Knoop. It's our great honor to have you as our keynote speaker for the seminar series. And this talk is a part of the MA Museum Study Curriculum Development Project. May I introduce Ajahn Riemer to everyone. He is the former lecturer in the Cultural Heritage at Rainbow Academy, Amsterdam University of Art, the Netherlands. He was a producer for the public televisions, and he served and held several positions in the Dutch heritage industry. And he is now he is a consultant of the Museum Study Curriculum Development Project for our program. So please give a round of applause to our speaker and Ajahn Riemer. I will give you all the stage to you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Ajahn Patu, Ajahn Yetyayan, dear fan, dear audience. It's totally exciting to have this lecture with you guys on a subject that is very close to my heart. How to deal in the world of heritage with gender diversity. Diversity and inclusion is a very big subject. Gender diversity and inclusion in heritage institutions is kind of a quest. And I made it the subject of my, lecturing practice the last 8 years at the Amsterdam University of the Arts, the Rijnwaard Academy, of which I happen to be a professor. And I'm very happy to be able to share the kind of thinking that I used in a kind of standard lecture. But I tweaked it to be very up to date, and also to encourage a kind of discussion I would like to have with you guys in the last half hour of this lecture time. So I'm going to take you to a PowerPoint presentation. Let's see whether it works. It usually works. 1, 2, 3. This is it. And then I do on run. It should be running. Yeah. I start with a very personal story of something that happened to myself as a researcher, and I then will slowly bring back the camera and look at the wider picture. First of all, in my own country, and then a little bit to other European countries. And I hope you will pick up from this information and insights that are useful for your own situation, wherever you are, in Indonesia, or Colombia, in Thailand, wherever in the world. But let's start very easily. So I'm going to take you in 5 steps. Personal discovery. Then I will discuss a little bit the state of affairs in my own country, where we come from. I do a little bit of theory. And then I ask ourselves the question, what can museums and archives do in the field of gender inclusivity? Here we go. 2 years ago, I was reading the Rijksmuseum Bulletin. The Rijksmuseum is the national museum of our country, and you see an old image of it behind my head. I live 500 meters from it. It is like one of these monster museums with like 2 million visitors and over 1 million pieces of in their collection. What they do is they publish scientific research papers. And 2 years ago, on the front cover of the bulletin, which is this scholarly paper, there was this amazing image of a hand holding a golden cup. And I always read this kind of journals because they're very well edited, very good research. And the whole issue, part of the issue, 40 pages of an article, were about this 17th century Iranian Persian miniature, a small picture like 20 centimeters high, that had been in the collection of a private collector in the Netherlands, and then went into the collection of the Rijksmuseum. I was totally charmed by it because it was part of a rich tradition in 17th century Persia, present-day Iran, of images of young men, and you can recognize them because they don't have a beard and they have this long hair before their ears, meaning they're like 12 or 15 before they shave. A rich tradition of images of young men holding a wine flask, wine bottle. This is a wine bottle, or in this case, something else, but a wine bottle and a cup. And I asked myself, what an interesting image. And how nice that it came into the Netherlands. And you notice that the difference between the left picture and the right picture is that the left picture, as it is now, is black background. And a little bit of a frill here and some additional painting at the waist of the figure. Whereas the original painting was much more colorful. So the whole article is about what happened to this painting when it came into the Netherlands. The background was filled in with black, and there were some additional elements. The only thing that was not in the article is what this picture is about. So I thought, if you look at similar pictures, very famous one, in the Louvre, this one, you see a person sitting and caressing the guy, the boy, because it's a boy, certainly not a girl, who's holding a bottle of wine here at the groin of the person, and the boy is offering the wine cup to obviously his master, because what is represented here is the Emperor Shah Abbas I, like the most powerful Iranian emperor of all times, 17th century, who is making love, or who is being shown in a sensual scene with his page, his servant. And actually, this interpretation is confirmed by a poem that is somewhere here in very small letters. It says, "May you drink from the river," there's a river here on the lower left side, "drink from the lips of your lover and drink from the bottle of wine," because that is kind of the earthly paradise. So I thought, dear museum, could this image be a Ganymede motif? Ganymede is used in Greek mythology to be a very handsome boy, and the Greek opera god Zeus fell in love with him, kidnapped him in the form of an eagle, and made him his wine bearer. So bearing wine to your master is a kind of a love scene. So I asked the Rijksmuseum, could this be a love scene motive on your small little miniature? To which they said, after a few months, because it took a while to answer my email, they said, no, we can't say that, we don't know it for sure. I said, okay. So what I did, I left it a little bit, and sometimes later I wanted to go back to the image, and I looked in the online database of the 1 million objects in the collection of the museum, and I found this one, a similar one. Look, it's a miniature, Persian, same background, same time, 17th century, and it shows two, well, guys, boys, like dancing, fighting, I don't know. The title of the image was Entangled Youths. Entangled means that they're holding each other. And I thought on the force of this interpretation of 17th century Iranian miniatures, why couldn't it be entangled not entangled youths, but boys making love? And I proposed this to the museum, and after a few months, I got a letter back. And the curator of the museum said, "Dear Riemer, here's an update on the Persian miniature. We have a commission called terminology, because we have to be very careful with how we use our words. And we also had our Asian art curator, because it's Asian art, to consult a specialist. And you're right, we changed the title and the description of this painting. No big deal, it's just a running text, but it's much clearer now. Old one is Two Entangled Youths, and the new one in the official description of the museum is Two Boys Making Love. I was so taken by this initiative of the museum to take over my suggestion that I posted it on the website, on Facebook, and the Rijksmuseum also did, and the Rijksmuseum had this text about it. They say, as a National Museum for Art and History, we think we should reach out to all. We believe in the power of diversity and plurality, so a multitude of different voices. Online, we share stories, blah, 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 this and that. Recently, we rediscovered this 17th century miniature made by an unknown artist with two young men in a playful sensual embrace. This was a normal and general aspect of contemporary Persian literature and art. I thought, oh, that is so nice. So on their official website, they are taking over my interpretation of a queer LGBTQR reading of this image. Not, and just to make sure, this posting was viewed more than 600 times, shared 77 times, and drew 140 comments, among which quite negative ones. The QAnon movement, Reborn US Christians, took it up and took offense in this queer reading, which to me is perfect, because you have to discuss this kind of positions. Art and heritage is about positions. It's about showing who you are and discussing where you want to go. I'm going to give you this PowerPoint so that you can look up, if you want to, these kind of Facebook references. I was very happy with the result of this small intervention of mine. There is a point, however, that not in all places are these images already open to a queer reading, like this very beautiful piece in the Louvre Museum. It's a tile work. It's like 1 meter by 1.5 meter. Same atmosphere, same background. Also, a similar kind of theme. See, there's an older man, because he's wearing a mustache, offering an apple to a younger man that you recognize now from the curls before his ears, who's holding a wine bottle in his hand and having a wine cup in his other hand. They interpret the scene, in French here, as men on the banks of a stream. That's right, they're sitting on the banks of a stream. You've got a stream, but we now know that there is more to it. It's a kind of love scene between an older man and a younger man. So our big struggle in heritage institutions, in museums, is to open up interpretations to other controversial or minority or gender-aware interpretations. I sent an email to the Louvre pointing to the Rijksmuseum miniature that is now definitely established as a love-making scene between two boys, and inviting them to open up their interpretations also to other readings, other knowledges. I don't think they will answer me for a while, but you always have to try, right? So this was my introduction. Took me only 5 minutes or 7 minutes to the more substantial lecture I'm going to give on LGBT readings, diversity, gender diversity in heritage institutions. Let's first look at the general state of affairs in my own country. Amsterdam is internationally renowned for next year 20 years of doing the Canal Parade, which is on the 5th of August, my birthday, the first week of August on a Saturday. 1 million people along the canals in Amsterdam gather because there's a queer boat parade. And for the first time in 2014, so 25 years after the first Canal Pride event, there was a boat of people from a Moroccan background celebrating their queerness, their being LGBTQI, gay and lesbian, which in the Moroccan community in our country, which is rather big, like 1 million people at least, in a population of only 17 million, created a very, very big discussion. And Moroccan leaders of the community said, oh, this is not part of who we are, and blah, blah, blah. So the perfect thing happened. It started to be a subject it could be, and it was discussed. You have to discuss this kind of thing in order to make it, to have it on the table and to not hide it. The point about this image is that the people on the boat are wearing a djellaba, which is the traditional Moroccan costume, which had been made modern by adding this Adidas triple stripe. So it became a little bit hip, sexy. And they also used the national colors, green, the green Moroccan national symbol, the 5-pointed star, on a pink overcoat. So it was a kind of play with national symbols, gay symbols, made modern, hip and sexy. And what the Amsterdam Museum did, the local, the municipal museum, is they added the prototypes of these clothes to their collection. There you see the designer of these clothes, a girlfriend of mine, Bobine Bos, to the curator of the museum, Annemarie de Wild, and the person, also a friend of mine, who started the idea of a Moroccan boat on the famous Canal Parade. And I don't know who he is, but he must be one of the organizers of the Canal Parade. So you see here clothes for the Moroccan boat, and it's part of the official collection of the Amsterdam Museum. Only shown during the queer Pride Week, as we call it, the first week of August. So it's part of the collection, but they still are a little bit like we don't show it all the time. What they do show all the time, and we are almost also very proud of it, is in 2001, first country in the world that opened official marriage legal marriage to people of the same gender, of the same sex. So the first wedding rings that were exchanged between two men from Frank Lemke and Peter Wittebrood were officially made part of the museum's collections in their permanent exhibitions. Because obviously, as a city with a strong gender diverse profile, we're kind of proud that that we have the first male couple wedding rings in the world. Another thing the Amsterdam Museum did and does is to include in the collection heritage monuments with a very strong gay or gender diverse character. Shortly after the war, a typical Amsterdam bar started that was open for people of the same gender, same sex, to be intimate with each other. You could sit here and hold hands as a gay couple or as a lesbian couple. Probably because the owner of the bar, Bets van Beren, you see here a big woman on a motorbike, was openly lesbian, and famously she brought her new lover girls on the back of a motorbike through the streets of Amsterdam. What the museum did is they copied the interior of this bar into the museum. So you walk into a bar in the museum in order to get a little bit of this atmosphere of the 50s, of like opening up public places to share the public symbols and the public behavior in same-sex relationships. I'm very proud, I'm very happy with this kind of celebrating gender diversity in one of the main museums in our country. The last thing I'm very proud of in my country is that very close to the city center, at the biggest church of the city, there's a pink monument, a gay monument, a pink triangle, and I'm going to explain to you where it comes from. Very big, broken in the public space by private initiative since now 25 years. And on National Liberation Day, there is a public celebration by representatives, official representatives of the armed forces. You see them here, Army, Navy, Royal, the police, National Police, and the emergency forces. They lay commemorative wreaths in memory of the people prosecuted in Second World War for being gay. That's something that's very big in our country, both the celebrations of the end of the Second World War and remembering those fallen civilians, military, and prosecuted people in the Nazi concentration camps. There was no place in the official national celebrations for people that were prosecuted for a gay background, for being gay, being queer. So therefore this private initiative had this pink triangle, and it is a kind of recognition by official powers, by the mayor of the city, by the armed forces, of the importance of this part of history, that they co-celebrate on National Celebration Day, National War Celebration Day, this part of our history. It took a struggle to get this in the public space, to get the official representatives here. Now, so let's go back a little bit and see how queer themes in art have been dealt with. People used to point to this scene of two kissing men in an early 18th century painting by Cornelis Troost, 1739, in the National Museum, the Mauritshuis, point as a proof of, oh, they could show kissing men in art. But if you look very closely, it's not. It's like a kind of moral warning that having too much alcohol will bring you into undesired situations, like being so drunk that you will kiss your male neighbor. This is a kind of reading discussion. How are you going to interpret these kinds of images? So be careful. Another one is the biggest painting in our country is the Battle of Waterloo. This is the Commander-in-Chief, Lord Wellington, and this is our Crown Prince, the later King William II, early 18th century, 19th century. He was the hero of Waterloo. And only since a few years, it's been officially recognized that he was a gay person. He had gay relationships with a lot of people in the capital. And while he was king, he was being blackmailed into signing the constitution, which he didn't like to, because his enemy said, otherwise we're going to tell in the public that you are having gay relationships with people of your own sex. It used to be hushed up. You cannot say that about royalty. Even though in the British tradition, it's totally okay to say about King James and Queen Anne that they indulged in having amorous sexual relationships with people of their own sex. In our country, not. If you turn to the content of the large, especially classic museums in Europe, you will notice very many images of, for instance, this Saint Sebastian, a Christian saint who because of his Christian belief was a martyr and killed by arrows shot in his naked body. And for many artists, it was a very good occasion to deliver very tasteful young naked male bodies in painting tradition. If you even go back even further, Roman art, Roman and Greek art, was known in the Middle Ages and later, especially the Renaissance, the Classicism, for its joyful depiction of especially male, but also female, nudity, which to a lot of people who hid their gay nature, their LGBTQ nature, we would nowadays call, was a perfect way of having the object of desire in your public space without necessarily having to come out as a gay or lesbian. I personally very much surprised to find in the Museo Baracco, this is where this picture comes from, an absolutely beautiful small museum in the city of Rome, a national museum with only a few hundred very, very good original Greek, Egyptian, and Roman pieces of sculpture, that there are extremely many hermaphrodites, so people of both male and female sexual characteristics in that collection. And I thought, and I did guided tours there for many times when I was living and working in Rome, but only recently I thought, this is such a coincidence. Who is this guy Baracco actually? So I did a little bit of study, and I found that Baracco is the name of a late 19th century, early 20th century Roman senator, Italian senator, very rich, very powerful, not married, who collected his kind of art and who lived with his chauffeur. But then I know, oh, it's one of these famous gay gentlemen that have a sublime kind of joy in secretly collecting this kind of delicious naked art. and no one will say anything about it because this is the way of the times. There's a lot of hidden LGBTQR desire in our museums collections, at least in the West, in the big European tradition. I even interviewed the director, a good friend of mine, the director of our National Museum, Rijksmuseum, Henk van Os. He's now in his late 80s. And I asked him, Henk, what do you do with queer presences in your collection? That the kind of art that has been so much delightful for the queer people of our own pasts. And he said, Rijksmuseum, yes, of course we have like queer art, whatever you call it. But my own curators, who are mostly gay, are the first people to deny their gay character or their queer character. Because in our Western tradition, denial of your true sexual or gender nature has been a very, very strong tradition. Many people just would rather die than come out of the closet, than being queered or having to admit that they're not straight. We call that the heteronormative dominance. Everything is hetero unless proved otherwise. And people like to hide in the safety of making believe that they're just straight. So Henk van Os, one of the famous Rijksmuseum directors, said on record to me, because I was preparing a big symposium on this subject, yes, of course we have kind of LGBTQR content in our collections, but it's our own staff who will deny its queer nature. Well, not so anymore. This is an exhibition in the British Museum a few years ago on the Emperor Hadrian, very famous, very powerful, very cultured, one of the most cultured Roman emperors of all time, and his relationship to his beloved male slave Antinous, that is his name, Antinous, is now openly admitted even by such high and mighty institutions as the British Museum. If you want to know more about this famous relationship, Hadrian was so in love with his slave that throughout the Roman Empire he erected many sculptures, many portraits of his beloved one. If you want to know more about it, then please do read Marguerite Yourcenar's novel, Hadrian's Memories, Hadrian's Memoirs, the Memoirs d'Hadrien. Marguerite Yourcenar is a French Nobel Prize winner, and what she wrote as his fictitious diary brings the tears to your eyes. It's one of the most impressive, 1951, most impressive imaginations about life, love, and the conditions that rule it. It was one of my coming out helps to just read it and think about in a philosophical manner what the human condition is. In my own city, the Amsterdam Hermitage, which now last week broke with the Hermitage in Petersburg. It said, no, sorry people, it cannot be connected to the Hermitage anymore because of the Ukraine-Russian war. They very, very clearly said, yeah, of course, here, Hadrian's lover Antinous portrait here about his love affair. Point is, people, that what we didn't put very clearly in the open is that the age difference between the emperor and his lover was like Well, 35 years. So when Hadrian, the emperor, was 47, he fell in love with a boy that's 12 years old. The boy died when he was 19. And Hadrian was so sad, so broken, that afterwards he didn't do very much. He was 59 and he died 6 years later. This part of the age difference is still taboo. Nowadays, we would be really, really forceful in condemning this kind of bad relationship. Perhaps we will see in age a time in which we will be more comfortable with this kind of taboos that is still there. Another taboo, another taboo still there. I'm going to discuss with you in a few minutes. The British Museum was very strong in feeling the pressure, the public pressure of coming out in or helping people read parts of the collection in an LGBT key. So what they did is they had a little gay history as a guide to the collection, in which they took 25 objects, key objects in the collection, and they provided it with a queer reading. But even here, there are limits. This is a very famous, small, 20 centimeters high Roman cup from the beginning of the Christian time, 10 AD, found in Palestine, bought by the museum 23 years ago for £1 million. It's silver, it's totally unique. And this is the official photograph they show. Well, it's not very much, right? They are a little bit ashamed of the sexual scene in the front of the cup, because what you see on the front side and the back side is something that can only be regarded and interpreted as an anal penetration by an older guy of a younger guy. It's not a fake. It's totally genuine and authentic. We have no parallels for it. It was found in Palestine. It's a good provenance, but still, the British Museum, though having it in its collection, though admitting its queer nature, is awkwardly embarrassed by the nature of the images. So in the official photographs, this one, the left one, they rather hide its contents than show it. So we still have this kind of distance to the things that we might just admit. People, this is life, this is our object, this is the content of our collection. And why are we doing difficult about it? This is a struggle that will go on, people. Like even in my own National Museum of Antiquities, where I used to work for 10 years, that the amazing classic Greek vase collection is themed in one section of their presentation as, okay, you've got women, you've got men, and you've got younger people. And this is how Greek society is represented in their figurative art. Well, let me tell you something. There was never in ancient Greece an equal division between males, females, and younger people. Women were invisible. They had to remain in-house, like present-day Muslim ways of behaving. They could never leave the house without the accompaniment of a woman slave, of a girl slave. They were not visible. So presenting ancient Greek civilization, ancient Athenian civilization, as a kind of 19th century kernel family, male, female, men, woman, and children, is kind of posing an Western modern framework of reference on a society that wouldn't recognize itself in it. And if you go to same-sex relations, this is a famous scene of an older man with a beard and a younger man, no beard, taking together showers after sports and you can see that the word kalos here. Kalos means beautiful. This is a vase given by or celebrating the love of an older man for a younger man. This is not something that only happens in sporting, but it's supposed to happen at many places in public and in private life in Greece. And framing it in this way is only something that that occurs in training, is doing injustice to a different kind of society that lets itself be shown to us now here in this way, but that a museum like our National Antiquities Museum is reframing it within its own way of knowing the world. So as LGBTQI community and a part of it, we wish the museum's official platforms for culture to make more aware of various readings of our cultural legacy. Like you can do this with Japanese erotic art and with many other sides of or aspects of the pictorial tradition in both Western and non-Western worlds. It's very funny. This is like a cartoon because this man making love to a man disguised as a woman, an actor, is complaining here, good heavens, the method of having male sex involves some elaborate arm works, which you see them doing here. Very funny. By the way, also lesbian ways of human behavior are not uncommon in pictorial traditions, and it's no way for us to forbid audiences to wherever possible to recognize themselves in it. Okay, some theory, people. If we go back in the European tradition of dealing with same-sex relationships, we see that non-heteronormative acts were only, like in the first, in the Middle Ages and the ages afterwards, only conditionally accepted. Okay, now Christianity started, and disapproval was more and more getting dominant. After the Middle Ages, early modern times, after 1500, the 16th century, even actively being prosecuted because it was unnatural, unchristian, and unhealthy. Until the French Revolution, which took distance from the power of the church, it said no. Napoleon, famous Code Penal, which is the penal code. That's the English word for it. So the law on crimes. Napoleon said, what people do between themselves is their own private thing. There's no place for that in our legal system. But in the end of that century, 1818, 1835, people started to think, because medicalization came in, it's not something you do, it's something you are. So it became an illness and therefore a crime. You are not doing things, you are a bad person. So criminalization took hold for more than a century. And I remember in 1973, we had a law, until 1973, we had a law forbidding adult people to having sex with persons under 23. And only in 1973, it became normalized. It became the same as the laws for the relationship between adults and younger people below the age of 16 punishable. So same-sex love only the last 40 years has been regarded on the same level legally as love between partners of different sex. In the UK, it even lasted until less than 20 years until these legal limits, age limits, were lifted. I show you here an image of the Institute for Sexual Science that was strong in Germany since 1919. Magnus Hirschfeld, he started this sexual science tradition in European investigation, European research, in which the sexuality was part of medicine and not social behavior. That had very, very big consequences in the war, because in the Nazi concentration camps, you had people that were imprisoned for their political beliefs. That's the red triangle. For people who were occupational criminals, for immigrants, for Bible researchers, that's the purple one, for homosexuals, and for people who were socially or antisocial. Here it says, it's the only picture I could find of an original Nazi camp plague. So lesbians were asocial people. They were denied sexuality. Only men were deemed to be capable of sexual identity. And this is where the pink triangle comes from. This one. You see here on the right upper hand side an image with a guy having a kind of triangle, which is light. And this is the only one of the very, very, very few images that prove the existence of homosexual concentration camp victims. Now, if you were Jewish, this is this row, that is like triple and double and triple trouble. Here comes the yellow triangle of the Jewish community, right? From now in the 50s and late 40s and early 50s, next step after the war in Europe, one person called McKinsey in the United States did research on sexual behavior. What do people do actually? First males, 16,000 of them, and 5 years later, in 1954 or 56, I don't remember, also for females. And he found that on the Kinsey scale, he asked people not what do you like, but what did you do? Have you ever had these kind of relationships? Here it's exclusively heterosexual, to position 6, exclusively homosexual. And what appeared is that very many men and very many women did not do exclusively either heterosexual or homosexual behavior. There was very many gradations in between. This was a bombshell in contemporary conceptions of sexual behavior. Now, if you do this on contemporary society, like in the UK, then you see that people were asked to tell what kind of sexual behavior did you do. Young people under the age of 24 in the UK, very large inquiry survey, less than half said that they had only heterosexual partners. More than half, you see here the light green, said that they engaged in incidental or equal or exclusive homosexual behavior. And you also see from the second graph that this fluidity decreases with age. The older you get, the more one-sided you become. Now, this is very important, this one, because this is a good image of our contemporary audiences. More than half do not conform to this idea that people are heterosexual unless otherwise proven. We have to reckon with the fact that most of our audiences in our contemporary societies would not conform to this heteronormative ideal. Now, the theoretical background behind that is that nowadays we make a difference between your heart, your sexual activity, and your mind, and your social behavior. So you have attraction, you have romance, you have biological sex, how you're built, and how you want to express yourself socially. We call that gender identity. This is very important, and especially in education, a very nice way of starting a discussion with people. Like ask them, how do you want to express yourself? What clothes you're wearing? What kind of colors do you like? Pink or blue? Or do you wear earrings? Or do you want to have a nice hat? That is a gender expression. Or what is your sex actually? There is a small percentage of people who are hermaphrodites, either because they both have female and male organs, or their genes and the DNA is showing signs of both extremes, etc., etc. This is something to keep in mind and to give to your children when they are in doubt about who they are, or they might be in doubt about who they are or want to be. But thankfully, there are cultures in the world that have different names for people who are in between male and female, in between gay and non-gay and hetero. Like in India, there's a caste of Hiras, those that want to express themselves or that are both men and women at the same time. Or in America, pre colonial, there are different genders between, or there are 3 different genders between male and female. And in my own country, we had a case of an absolutely brilliant student. You see at the time her, Tim Sprenger, and me on the right-hand side, giving her the prize of the best thesis that she wrote. And after she left the academy, she slowly turned in 2 stages, 3 stages, into a man. And Tim is now a guy. And he had a national interview on the back page of one of the better news pages, recounting his extremely difficult transition of being from a girl to a guy. And I called him and said, "Oh, Tim, what an extraordinary journey, and how sad that I didn't know anything about that when I gave you the first prize here. I so much wanted to have you come out and feel safe enough in our university community to share this kind of struggle." He said, "It's okay. It was a private one, and I'm ready to make it public." And that is the last part of my lecture, 5-10 minutes. What can we do in order to help these fellow people? Ourselves, actually. Well, first of all, you have to realize that being accessible may be inclusive, but not diverse. Accessibility for a museum means that people with a physical different condition find themselves welcome. Wheelchairs, also intellectual, don't use stupid words when you don't need to. Cultural accessible, does it make sense in my own cultural background? Or social, do I feel that it appeals to me and not to my learned neighbor? See, then you're only inclusive, but you have to feel represented by what the museum of the archive shows and does. Can I recognize myself in the images and the persons that are being shown? And then only you become diverse and you become a welcome place for people to feel part of your community. So there's a difference between inclusivity and diversity. Inclusive means accessible, but it doesn't mean you are open to a diversity of people. Okay, that having said, let's go to one or two examples. You can give a voice to people who otherwise feel they are murdered. Think of the HIV/AIDS of the issues in the 80s. You have to present and represent minority, not only ethnic, social, and cultural, but also in terms of gender. Show them or show yourself in embracing them. This people is about human rights because museums and archives are active in the public domain, not in the private domain. And the public domain is a space of all of us. By the way, this notion of diversity, like pluralism, multivocality, inclusion, is something that people call, yeah, it's a bit Western, it's a bit United Nations. So it's not for us. Well, it may be, but please think about it, because it saves lives. And I'll show you why. Our National Bureau of Statistics, Government Bureau of Statistics, Social Cultural Plan Bureau, has every year to come up with statistics about how people find themselves. Are they happy? Can they speak out in their sexual orientation? And I give here, it's in Dutch, but I'll translate it for you. People seriously considering suicide in the LGBT community is 1.6 out of whatever. In the non-LGBT community is 1.226 or 2. So suicide, having tried to commit suicide in people under 25 is more than 4 times the number of people of a non-LGBTQ background. And this number is rising. Helping people to be recognized in public institutions like ours addresses the problem of high suicide rates. It saves lives. This is crucial. It's not a luxury. It's not something, oh yes, let's do something nice for the gay people here or for these poor lesbians. No, it is something we have to do in order to prevent people from trying to end their lives because they're deeply, deeply, deeply excluded, unhappy. Good. I think I made my point, even though I should have translated this page. How? Well, talk about it. Do in your acquisition actions of embracing the subject. Question what it is to be normal. What do we find normal? Try out, this is in the picture, an image of the Rijksmuseum, National Museum, in which a few years ago, philosopher Alain de Botton was invited to comment on normality. So he created these huge posters in 2 languages in which he criticized or questioned what was being portrayed in these paintings and these sculptures. So you can organize a second critical voice, temporary or permanently, in your presentations. What we now have in most, in the biggest general museums in the West, like our own National Museum or the British Museum or the Tate Gallery, is pink tours. Why not have a guided tour on a theme? Theme could be LGBT presence in or around the collections. And people try to make it fun. Like nothing is so successful as like this one. In the Fashion Institute in New York a few years ago, they had a queer history of fashion. And you already get the fun of it when you say from the closet to the catwalk. It's everywhere, and use your sense of humor to address painful or difficult subjects. Don't out it. Don't nail people to the wall saying you're queer, but make it visible, make it a subject of a good discussion with each other. In my own Rijnwaard Academy, we did with a master course research, collective research into, for instance, these are master students, into, for instance, how do we deal with AIDS quilts as when they become part of the museum collection? Because these AIDS quilts are a memorial for people having died from AIDS. 90% are queer people, and their relatives, their parents, they want to remain owners of these quilts. So it's a museological problem. How are we dealing with joint ownership? So you can make it into something you study. Tate Britain in 2017 did a hugely successful exhibition on the presence of queer artists in British art history for the last century, namely the century in which queer activities were punished by law with imprisonment. Think of Oscar Wilde. Or here, the British Museum that did this queer reading in their permanent exhibition. Here you see his famous cup, good front now, on the cover of the symposium here, and you can read it in their permanent exhibition. Why not do it? Or here, the Amsterdam Museum, they organized a rainbow dress project. All the countries that still prosecute LGBTQIs, their national flags are woven into a huge flag that is exhibited every year, once or twice. And whenever the legal system allows for a normalization of LGBTQIs, that flag will be removed from this rainbow dress. Or start with having gender neutral, all gender restrooms. You can do that and have a discussion piece about it, a discussion starter. Why do you do it? How does it work? How bad it is? How do people feel? In one of our Dutch more revolutionary modern art museums, the Van Abbe Museum in the beautiful city of Eindhoven, they introduced a kind of walking dictionary in the form of a coat that you can wear while visiting the museum. And so your coat works as a conversation starter with other people. And it's so successful, they had to double and triple the number of coats that you can choose out when you enter the museum, because people love for a small amount of time to show that they care, to discuss about these kinds of subjects. And you see here that the coat is officially added as an object in the museum's collection. Now, I end with this, I think, wonderful image of 3 publicly available, 2 of them free resources for de-stereotyping gender issues in museums. This is the gender stereotypes in archaeology is a freely available collection of small, very funny essays made by international activists by Sidestone Press. If you click on this, you will have the book on things like, of course, it was only women that cooked in antiquity. Oh, 2 adult women buried together are always the lady and a chambermaid, never a lady and a lover. Or this one, gender archaeology is practiced only by women and gay men. These are discussion starters that I really like to recommend to you people. Just click on it and enjoy. Or this one, by the same Van Abbe Museum in Eindhoven. All these terms that we are always struggling with. What is queer? What is gender? What is gay? What is pinkwashing? Are discussed here by Alice Venier and Olle Lundin. This was his master thesis, by the way. It's free to download if you click on this link, and you have a year of work ahead of you, because it's full of suggestions, full of examples of how you can engage this very difficult area. Difficult because people are blind to LGBTQ aspects in our contemporary world. Now, and I wish to end with this one. It's a small book, 100 pages, by two Australian curators and researchers, Nikki Sullivan and Craig Middleton. It's called Queering the Museum, and it's an essay on anything that you might want to know about different knowledges that you need to open up the space to welcome and to revolutionize our museums and archives in order to be truly diverse and inclusive towards everyone and all. So this is not free, eh? You have to buy it, but because it's $16. So even with for people with a small wallet, it's accessible. I give here the where you can find it. Now, this is my talk, and if we conclude, we see, yes, even small cases, we can be successful. Takes a while, but even national museums are happily agreeing to reach out and include. We're not there yet. And we've come from a long way with many ups and downs, and we're not sure that it's only going up. Do take the time to sit down and think about theory. It's not easy. I have half a bookshelf full of theoretical publications on from acts to essence to fluidity. It's not easy, but you have to sit down and think about it. And there's a lot of things you can do, and it can also be fun. I hope to have inspired you a little bit with this talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ajahn Riemer. It's very informative and it's very fruitful presentation. I think we have some question, right? Ajahn Tom, are you having a questions or okay. All right. มีคำถามไหมคะ ท่านผู้เข้าร่วมชมมีคำถามนะคะ we do have question from my student.
Okay.
Okay, I ask the question from Thai language.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not good English. Is it the pink triangle? Brown is the Nazi category homosexual, right?
I love to answer your question, but I'm not sure I quite understood it. Perhaps you first say it in Thai, and then Patu will Patu will translate it for you.
So sorry. สามเหลี่ยมนะครับที่เขาจัดหมวดหมู่เป็นแบบสำหรับคนที่แบบเกิดจากนาซีที่เขาจัดหมวดหมู่ให้เป็นแบบสำหรับคนที่เป็น LGBT ป่ะคะในเรือนจำนาซี
Oh, okay. Okay. Raymer, I think Shogun has a question about the design and the sign that you show us in maybe you can go back the triangle one, and is that indicate each of like the what was your question like the homosexual show ถามหมายถึงว่าเขามีความหมายอะไรยังไงใช่ไหมคะหมายถึงว่า
ค่ะ
อืมอ่าใช่ไหมหมายถึงว่าหนูถามว่าอันนั้นน่ะคือเป็นการแบ่งอะไรแบบนี้ปะ
การแบ่งใช่ค่ะ เพราะว่าในแนวในในปัจจุบันนะคะโชเห็นไอไอสามเหลี่ยมตัวเนี้ยมันจะอยู่ในช่วงแบบมันจะเป็นซิมโบลิกของ LGBT ไปเลยอะค่ะซึ่งตอนนั้นโชคิดว่าในตอนแรกอะคือเขาจัดให้เป็นหมวดหมู่ของ LGBT ใช่ไหมคะแบบเป็นhomosexual แต่ว่ามันเหมือนมีความหมายเป็นแบบ negative ไว้ก่อนแต่ปัจจุบันคือเหมือนแบบพวก LGBT เขาก็เปลี่ยนให้มันเป็น positive ก็คือเขาก็ยังแบบรู้สึกว่าไอ้สัญลักษณ์ตรงนี้มันไม่ได้รู้สึกว่ามันเป็น negative เท่าไหร่แต่มันกลายเป็น positive ของที่ LGBT เขาใช้อย่างเงี้ยค่ะใช่แล้วคืออยากรู้ประมาณแค่ว่าคือเขามีการเปลี่ยนแปลงและยอมรับการเกิดขึ้นได้ยังไงบ้าง
Okay. So Shogun would like to learn more, or maybe you can explain more about the design and the symbol of that you show like the triangle one, and how how they differentiate each of design and how they how you say it, like accept like each of the different in the homosexual. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. You have to realize that the system of destruction of people in the Nazi concentration camps started with dehumanizing individuals. So you were given a number that was etched on your arm. You were not an individual anymore. You were a number. And you had symbols to define your criminal status. They used, this is really devilish, they used colors to indicate what kind of crime you had committed. So the upper row, political, criminal, migrant, Christian, gay, and antisocial is the starting point. And then you get like, to make it worse, like when you did it twice, you get an extra band. When you were already punished for it, you got a drop under it. When you were a criminal and a Jew, you had this double triangle. So you were not supposed to talk even in a Nazi in a Nazi concentration camp. You were like systematically, scientifically, in an industrialized way, identified as belonging to a certain category. So anyone could always, from the color and from the initial bands, decide your identity. Oh, you are a Jew, migrant, doubly convicted migrant, whatever. So it was visible from the color, the shape, and the additional lines and circles on your chest, because you had to wear it over your heart on the left side of your chest. And there's no connection between the color and the nature of your crime. Even though political red, if you were a communist, you were a political criminal, eh? So what the gay movement did in the 70s, they picked up this discriminatory sign and made it into a symbol of pride. So it's in the 70s, and I remember it. I'm old, I'm 66. I remember people starting to use the pink triangle. That was wonderful, because it was an act of insubordination. You identify yourself with the symbol that your enemy had given you. There's some sadness in it, but there's also kind of, we will stand up with and for the people that have been killed because of this insane, dehumanizing system of gay prosecution. So this is a very, very strong use of symbolism in standing up, in reaching out, in coming out, in outing. The OUT is already a very strong word in gay activism. Did I ever use it myself? Yes. Not so much, because anyone can see for me that I'm gay. I don't need this. I'm in my school, in my academy, I was the only, can you believe that? In an art academy, I was the only teacher from 40 who always came out for being gay. That is something like, okay. And there must have been 2 or 3 others, but they rather said, nah, blah, 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 we don't do that. Good. Did I go into your question enough, Chukun? Okay, thank you. I will stop sharing now because I want to see you guys.
อาจารย์ปิดไมค์อยู่ค่ะ
sorry พูดไปตั้งเยอะขอโทษ ค่ะนะคะก็คืออย่างที่อาจารย์ริมเมอร์บอกเนาะก็คือว่ามันเป็นคือมันเป็นเรื่องของการลดมันทำให้เหมือนกับบั่นทอนความเป็นมนุษย์นะคะแล้วก็ในการที่เหมือนกับไป stigmatize หรือว่าการบอกว่าแบบแต่ละคนเป็นยังไงเป็น criminal ในด้านไหนๆอะไรเงี้ยใช่ไหมแล้วเหมือนกับโฮโมก็เป็นอย่างหนึ่งใช่ไหมที่เหมือนกับบอกว่าเป็น criminal แล้วก็มาแบบเรียกว่าอะไรนะตีตราเนาะเหมือนกับว่าเป็นอะไรต่างๆเนี่ยนะคะแล้วก็เหมือนมันก็มีทรายด้วยอะไรนะสีใช่ไหมที่แตกต่างอะไรเงี้ยก็ไม่ได้ดีอ่ะที่มันสะเทือนใจแบบนั้น
สีไว้ที่หัวใจ
นะคราวนี้ก็เห็นว่าคุณเดซี่ได้ช่วยส่งลิงก์มาให้นะคะลิงก์เมื่อสักครู่นี้ก็คือลิงก์ที่สามารถที่จะเข้าไปอ่านเพิ่มเติมได้ในเรื่องของไอ้การสามเหลี่ยมสีชมพูนี้นะคะแล้วก็เมื่อสักครู่นี้เห็นคุณเดซี่มีคำถามไหมคะอยากจะแชร์อะไรบางอย่างหรือเปล่าเรียนเชิญเดซี่เลยค่ะI think we have one yeah okay
แค่อยากจะเสริมประเด็นอาจารย์เมื่อกี้เฉยๆเรื่องของการรีเคลมสัญลักษณ์นั้นในช่วงหลัง70มาแต่ว่าอาจารย์ได้พูดไปเรียบร้อยแล้วแล้วก็ใส่ไปในลิงก์ด้วยแล้ว
ค่ะขอบคุณมากเลยค่ะ
แล้วก็ต่อด้วยคำถามของไม่เชิงคำถามของเรซี่เองแต่ว่าเป็นso I work at the National Science Museum, and so I don't really have anything about art or history that's in my context, but potentially I've been thinking about doing something for Pride Month. I work in the education department, so maybe it could be some event where we talk about queer scientists and how they've actually always been here, always have changed. They've actually changed the world quite a lot, and that never just comes up. It's like everybody just don't talk about it, just talk about their science, but they forget that scientists are people too, and queer people have always been here. Yeah, that's it.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Malatum. I couldn't agree more. And a very interesting way of approaching the subject is like just ask people about gender division. How many women have been working in science? How many women have been silenced by this male-dominated cultural system of ours? It's wonderful to let your pupils or your visitors think about the role of different genders, and then automatically you come on this amazing creative forces of also the gay scientists. Think of the inventor of the computer who killed himself shortly after the war. I'm looking for his name. I just can't think of it. But there's so many good examples.
Was it Alan Turing?
Alan
Or was
Turing.
it someone else?
Yeah. Alan Turing. Totally. Yeah. And well, there's so many good examples, but you have to find a kind of opening, a kind of handle to start discussing the subject, and that's usually the most difficult thing. But like starting with how many women do you see as scientific heroes is a very good one. Reveal
Thank you.
how they have been silenced, and then automatically you get into other voices, other knowledges.
Nice. So we make it like we address it and we try to provoke or show that there are many voices, that we can that can be heard, and we should talk about it, right, in the museum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can show them. And
thank you so much.
there's a famous dictum by the president, Mr. Fleming of the ICOM, one of the ICOM committees. He says any subject can be used to start a discussion on human rights, because gender diversity is a human rights issue.
Yeah. Yes.
If you
Exactly.
only go for the gender visibility, then you will lose it. But you have to raise it up to a higher level of it's every person's right to be recognized. It's a rights thing. That makes it, in my experience, to be undeniable. There was one, listen, I give you an anecdote here, unless there are other urgent questions. Otherwise, I will give you my anecdote.
Okay. Or let's see. There is one question from Ajahn Nat. Ajahn Nat, would you like to ask the question by yourself? Or
Okay. I can. Actually, I can. I just tried to remind myself. But hello,
Yes.
Dr. Riemer. Hi. It's like first, thank you for your presentation. Like with the new knowledge about like the triangle symbol today. Yeah. It's like I know you talk about like kind of the way to enhance like the way that museum should open to the gender issues are presented it. But I just still thinking like about what about the museums in the country that very restricted with the sexual issues, like and sometimes find it like still is a prohibit topic to say about it. Like do you have any more concrete like approach or advice, like if you can give them?
I'm actually very, very happy that you asked that question, because it very closely fits in with the anecdote I was about to share with you. So,
okay.
but we have to really talk about it. It's about taboos, and in the countryside, somehow, as opposed to metropolitan areas, big cities, there are different kinds and perhaps more taboos on normality than in the big cities, right? So I'm living and working in Amsterdam. You see the city center of Amsterdam behind me. One of my students, a bachelor student, so was young girl, 19 or 20, took up the subject of gender diversity and did an internship in a provincial capital, small city, 80,000 people, in the province of Friesland, which is like a little bit far away from the big cities in our country. She worked in the provincial museum, and she interviewed people on gender issues, amongst whom also the director of the museum. And 5 minutes into the interview, The director, a man my age, a little older, not gay, told the student a little bit jokingly, you know, he said to her, there are no gay people in Friesland. They all went to Amsterdam, so don't do this research here. And I said, what? And I really became a little bit annoyed because the student came to me with the question, Dr.Riemer, what should I do? Because there's so much pushback in the countryside provincial museum that I don't know what to do. And I said, you know what? You're totally right. It is difficult. But I will call out this director and put him to shame. And I did in a public occasion. And as I'm doing now, I said, how is it possible that people deny the existence of 5 to 10% of the people in our societies with the alarming phrase that we don't have them here. Of course we have them here. And a museum, even in a small city, should be a place of safety for everyone. And it is difficult. We never told you it will be a piece of cake. And try to do it slowly, try to do it circumspectly, try to approach it in a gentle way, try to feel people at home, try to make, it's very important, try to find a straight ally. It's very important that you find someone in a community who is not gay or lesbian or trans or whatever, to be your partner, to be your role model. This is absolutely essential because normal people who have never thought about the subject need a role model to follow. When I told my parents for the first time when I was 16 that I was gay, they cried and I cried. And the next thing they asked is, what is gay? Because they'd never given it any thought. So I had to help them. They couldn't because I was 16. They didn't have any role models. So it's a way of organizing. Really. Sitting back, we have a luxury of our intellectual backgrounds, our networks. That's why I gave you in the last slide these 3 references. With good practices and good thinking. It's not something that you will do in one go. It's something you have to sit down, think about, organize, call people, bring people together, be creative, put in a lot of fun. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
You feel that I'm really growing into the subject because it's something
I really
our
I
daily
really
life.
what you said, like it's like be the role model. Like I never thought in that way before. Yeah, museum could be a role model to
Yeah, you can,
people.
anyone can. Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I love your question because some people don't dare ask it. It's a very good question.
Thank you. Any or other comments or anything that you guys would like to share your experience? Kun Gate, yes. Yes, we have Kun Gate. Yes, please.
Hi, can everyone hear me? I'm not sure if it works. But
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Pasha, and actually Thai people have 2 names basically. So, my nickname is Kate, so that's why Ajahn Patu called me Kate. But actually, either way, I'm fine. But first of all, I would like to thank you, Dr. Riemer, for your lecture presentation. It's very fun. I enjoyed it a lot. And I'm not exaggerating or anything. It's really fun. Like I listened through the whole thing, and it also made me miss Amsterdam a lot because I went there and I did my master's there, and a very good memory. A lot of yeah, and I don't really have like a question per se, but I have some something that I want to talk about. Back to the part that you were referring to that in some culture we have a specific terms to call like people with like alternative genders, not like male or female. And in the Thai language, we do have that, but I think it's still problematic. We have this word. I'm sorry if it's offensive, but we have the word "kathoy," which It's basically it just means hermaphrodite or like hetero. Like no, I mean like people with two genders or something.
Genders,
And this word actually has been embraced by the people within the LGBT community for some people. If they use it by themselves, within themselves, then it's fine. It's also like it's acceptable for them. But if someone from the outside, like for example, if some like male like use that word, it might be offensive to them. Or
I know.
So with like about the terms is still I think when people think about Thailand, people think that we are a country that a little bit open with these like is very friendly for the people with like LGBTQ community. But I think in reality there's still a lot of work to do because we don't really do it in any official way. For example, we still don't have the law for like a same-sex marriage or anything, and it's still like in the discussion. And nothing has ever been official about these things, but we just like we act like we it's fine, and we are okay with it. But it's never been it's never been on the paper or anything. So just something that I want to talk about, maybe.
Thank you for adding this kind of local flavor, if I may say it irrelevantly. There's many. First of all, you have to realize that the culture where you speak from has its own rules and regulations. In our culture, Dutch culture, as you may have witnessed when you were here, you always say directly what you mean.
Yes.
Right? People who like, oh. Even in like Italy or in France or in Greece, these rules are different. Sometimes you are in a social environment in which it is good measure not to say directly what you mean. Now, Southeast Asian cultures are known for being permissive. Like I'm from half Indonesian descent, and up to Indonesian society was to a high degree permissive, without ever saying so. If you don't cause embarrassment, if you don't cause people to lose face, then very many things are possible without addressing it as such. So that's point one. Point two, homophobia and transphobia will remain issues for people who feel threatened and challenged. The more, let's make this political. The more right wing you are, the more or extreme extremist, that is the wrong word. The more orthodox you are, both in a left and wing and a right wing political spectrum, the more you will feel challenged by something that's not heteronormative. Because the opposite of heteronormative is not homonormative, but fluid. Let's discuss what norms are. And the end of it maybe, or will in many cases be, let's keep the discussion about norms and normality as open as possible, without feeling personally attacked by someone who does it in a different way. See? So I do not want to be defined in the terms of my opponent. So the opposite of heteronormativity is not queer normativity, but it's a different way of thinking about norms. So that is a long way to go. And I love, because I'll be visiting your country in the first week of April.
Oh,
I'd love to have a workshop on this.
yeah.
When Bangkok, and we sit together and just like nice something, and because talking about these things is the beginning of understanding, the beginning of opening up.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that.
Wow, nice. Yes, thank you. Okay, Riemer, would you like to end with something? Do you have anything to add before we end this session? Yeah. Oh, Ajahn, oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any other questions? Ajahn Tom, I don't see. Oh, okay. We have one more question. Ajahn Tom, please.
A quick one, because I have to
quick
run.
one. And yeah, Ajahn Riemer has to run as well, so it might be very quick, Ajahn.
Yeah, but please feel free to put anything on the table.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Tom. I'm in Mahasarkham in the northeast of Thailand, 6 hours from Bangkok by bus. So I think it's good to listen to the voices and represent the gender or the sexuality in the museum. When I was in Montpellier, the south of France, the south of France, yes, the city have a big gay pride parade, quite big gay pride parade in this city. I met one group in the parade is the parents of LGBTQI. They represent how can we going to be the good parents for LGBT. I think it's very touching my mind. This is very good one for educate the people to give a good lesson to the people. This is I impressed in the party.
Yeah.
I could you please recommend somewhere on the best one in the museum who represent where represent or voices the gender in the museum. Could you please recommend me? I can go into learning from it.
Ajahn Tom, thank you so much for this question. It's been on our minds for a long time. How are we going to help the relatives or the families of LGBTQI kids? There's nothing for them. And not even in public places. Why is there a museum for any subject in the world? Spiders, electronics, warfare, but not for the thing that occurs in every fifth family of our societies. So, in our country, I've been active the last 2-3 years to come up with a kind of permanent or semi-permanent exhibition helping families to get knowledge, to exchange emotions, to support the fact that one of the kids may be gender fluid. Because when you're 12, you don't know really where you're going, right? So out of this development, some people will turn out bi or gay or lesbian, trans or whatever, or inter, and there is no public knowledge base for this. So I would recommend the system of national museums to come up with a kind of safe knowledge and opinion-based platform for people who want to know and to experience more on this subject. It would be a wonderful idea. It's kind of a social education, or it's medical education, or an personal development education. like you learn about science, like you learn about the world. This is part of the world you were invited to be part of. How can you do that when your support structure, which is the family, is totally alien to where you will be going? I don't know of any good examples. Not in this country. There's like obligatory sexual education in secondary schools, but I don't know. And I'm a little bit too old for that. You need a younger generation to connect to that.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
It's a major subject. I don't have an answer, but I thank you for bringing it up. It's very important. And let's do something creative and fun.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's it, right? Okay, Riemer, so would you like to say the last last word or anything for the talk?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm going to say something very nice. I've held this lecture in different forms for the last 6-7 years, always for a great group of like 200 second-year bachelor students. And it was always totally silent when I approached this subject. No one, like, oh, this is scary. Okay. And at the end of the day, always there were 1 or 2 students who gave me an email like at night, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Thank you, Professor Riemer, for addressing this subject. So this is something I wish to share, because even in, let's say, normal education, this is not a subject that you are usually confronted with, not even in my own country, not even in my own academy. That's why. So I held this talk in various places in the world, and your kind of reaction has been the most rich and open thus far. So I thank you guys for your engagement with me, with each other on this subject. It really fills my heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think your presentation, I'm sure that today's your talk has given the participant the knowledge and also like the insight information that can be used in practical manners. And I think maybe slowly, at the time, but I think I'm sure that at least, you address this today, and it's in our mind, everyone's in the mind, that we think that this subject or this issue is very important, and it is in our hand, museum people, that what we can do to make our museum safe, right, and become a platform for all voices, and the museum is for all, inclusivity. All right.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. ขอบคุณ May I say it in Thai ขอบคุณผู้เข้าร่วมเสวนาทุกท่านนะคะที่มาร่วมสร้างบทสนทนากันในวันนี้นะคะก็คิดว่าในวันนี้สาระสนทนาในวันนี้ในประเด็นแรกในเรื่องของ gender inclusivity and heritage นะคะก็จะเป็นเรื่องราวที่เป็นประโยชน์นะคะแล้วก็คิดว่าอย่างน้อยๆก็จะได้เป็นเขาเรียกอะไรเป็นเบื้องต้นเนาะที่เราได้มาพูดถึงเรื่องราวเหล่านี้แล้วก็อาจจะเป็นจุดเริ่มต้นในการที่เราจะได้มาร่วมนะคะสร้างสรรค์เปลี่ยนแปลงนะคะหรือว่าเริ่มที่จะพูดคุยในเรื่องนี้ในพิพิธภัณฑ์แล้วก็ทำให้พิพิธภัณฑ์เนี่ยเป็นพื้นที่แห่งการเรียนรู้สำหรับทุกคนได้จริงๆนะคะก็คิดว่าอย่างที่อาจารย์ริมเมอร์บอกนะบอกว่าเราต้องแบบไปแอคชั่นแล้วก็ไปฟันนะก็คือว่าขอให้ทุกท่านเนี่ยก็ตอนนี้ก็น่าจะเป็นช่วงเวลาที่เราได้ไปสนุกกันกับคอลเลกชันหรือว่ากับพื้นที่ที่ทำงานที่เราทำงานกันอยู่นะคะก็โปรดติดตามสารัฐสนทนาพิพิธภัณฑ์ศึกษามหิดลนะคะครั้งต่อไปได้นะคะตามFacebook นะคะก็คือ Facebook ของเราเพจนี่คือโครงการจัดตั้งหลักสูตรศิลปศาสตร์มหาบัณฑิตสาขาพิพิธภัณฑ์ศึกษานะคะอนุกรมวิวิธล่องใต้นะคะก็เราก็จะมีทอล์กแบบนี้ไปเรื่อยๆนะคะแล้วก็สัปดาห์หน้าเราก็จะเปิดตัวนะคะเล่าเรื่องราวเกี่ยวกับการเดินทางแล้วก็จะเชิญพวกเรานะคะร่วมเดินทางไปกับพวกเราด้วยนะคะในระหว่างวันที่17 ถึง 27 มีนาคมนี้ นะคะแล้วก็เรายังมีเราพยายามจะลิงก์ไปที่ Facebook RILCA Museum Studies ด้วยนะคะแล้วก็เรามีขออนุญาตว่ามีแบบประเมินให้ทุกท่านนะคะช่วยประเมินด้วยนะคะว่าทอล์กวันนี้เป็นอย่างไรนะคะแล้วก็หรือมีคำแนะนำอะไรเพิ่มเติมนะคะเราจะได้นำไปปรับปรุงนะคะก็สำหรับวันนี้หากมีอะไรผิดพลาดนะคะก็ขออภัยมาณที่นี้ด้วยนะคะก็หมดแล้วนะคะก็พวกเราก็ทุกคนนะคะก็ขอบพระคุณทุกท่านนะคะที่เข้ามาร่วมแลกเปลี่ยนเรียนรู้นะคะแล้วก็วันนี้ขอลาไปก่อนสวัสดีค่ะ Thank you อาจารย์ Riemer and we are looking forward to seeing you in the 1st of April and I think
Love to.
love
Love
to
to.
and
Thank you.
yes
Bye.
thank you and have a safe trip here
Thank you. Bye bye.
thank you bye bye ขอบคุณทุกท่านนะคะ
ขอบคุณค่ะ
ขอบคุณมากค่ะ ขอบคุณน้องแก่นะคะ
ขอบคุณค่ะอาจารย์
ค่ะขอบพระคุณมาก
บอกจะนัดอยู่ต่อไหม
ๆ อาจารย์นัทค่ะเดี๋ยวชวนคุยนิดนึงต่อ
ได้ค่ะ
ค่ะ โชกุนเป็นยังไงบ้าง
ปีนี้จื้อกำลังจะออกแล้ว
โอเคอยู่ค่ะ
โอเคอยู่นะคะ เดี๋ยวไปคุยต่อกันได้เนอะน่าจะมีประเด็นอะไรที่โชว์สนใจเป็นพิเศษจ้าค่ะ
โอเคขอบคุณนะคะ
ขอบคุณค่ะสวัสดีจ้า